The air on Ajin Kloss was thick with the scent of damp earth and verdant growth, a tranquil contrast to the controlled chaos of their training. Leia, lightsaber humming with a steady thrum, moved through a series of complex deflections, her brow furrowed in concentration. Luke watched, a quiet presence at the edge of the clearing, guiding her with subtle shifts in his own force presence. It was a rigorous session, pushing Leia to the very limits of her burgeoning abilities. Suddenly, mid-parry, a faint resonance pulsed through the clearing. It wasn't the rhythmic thrum of Leia's lightsaber, nor the whisper of the wind through the jungle canopy. It was deeper, an ancient hum that seemed to vibrate not just the air, but the very force around them. Leia stumbled, her blade dipping, her gaze drawn to a small, overgrown alcove carved into the rock face nearby, a natural feature they had passed countless times. From the shadows of that alcove, a faint, crystalline light began to emanate. It wasn't blinding, but soft, inviting, almost beckoning. Luke and Leia exchanged a glance, a silent question passing between them. There was no mistaking the deliberate nature of this emergence. They approached cautiously. Nestled within a bed of moss, half buried by centuries of neglect, lay a holocron unlike any Luke had ever encountered. It wasn't a standard pyramidal or cuboid shape, but an intricate, organic lattice of kyber-infused crystal, pulsating with that gentle internal light. As Luke reached out, his fingers hovering just above its surface, the light intensified. But it wasn't his touch that awakened it. It was their combined force presence, a unique dual signature of Skywalker lineage and potent Jedi potential that seemed to call to it. The crystal lattice rearranged itself with a soft audible click, and a shimmering, almost ethereal projection flickered into being above it. This was no ordinary Jedi teaching device. The projection wasn't a standard blue ghost of a bygone master. Instead, it was an abstract, swirling nebula of information, occasionally resolving into fleeting images, a ship in hyperspace, a shadowed figure, a glimpse of a familiar face, then dissipating back into the cosmic dance. A calm, resonant voice filled the clearing, ancient yet clear, devoid of emotion, yet brimming with profound purpose. "I am the Archivist," it intoned. "For too long, the history of this galaxy has been written by victors and simplified by the powerful. There are shadows within shadows, conflicts unseen, heroes unsung. This holocron holds one such truth, a story too dangerous to reveal in its own time, a war fought in the dark against an enemy thought untouchable. It is the history of Qi'ra and her secret struggle against the Sith." Luke felt a jolt. Qi'ra, the leader of Crimson Dawn? A crime lord? He had known her name, of course, synonymous with shadow syndicates and galactic underworld power. The idea of her being a hero or fighting the Sith in any meaningful way seemed utterly preposterous, almost insulting to the memory of the Jedi who had truly sacrificed everything. He looked at Leia, who, ever the pragmatist, simply nodded, her expression unreadable but attentive. The holocron then unfolded Qi'ra's saga. It began with her ascendance within Crimson Dawn, not as a mere puppet, but as a cunning strategist, carefully dismantling rival syndicates, consolidating power. The Archivist's narration accompanied holographic projections, sometimes raw, unedited memories, sometimes intricate tactical displays. Luke watched as Qi'ra navigated the treacherous currents of the underworld, using deception as her primary weapon. She was a master of misdirection, often appearing to serve Palpatine's interests while meticulously undermining them from within. The true revelation began to dawn on Luke as the holocron delved deeper. Qi'ra wasn't just fighting for power, she was fighting for control of information, for access to vital resources, all with a singular hidden objective: to starve the Sith of their dark relics, their ancient knowledge, their very lifeblood. She wasn't confronting them with lightsabers, but with whispers, with sabotage, with the slow erosion of their influence. She had systematically targeted cults of the Sith Eternal, disrupted their supply lines for dark artifacts, and even orchestrated the destruction of several hidden academies where Force-sensitive children were being warped by the dark side. One particularly harrowing sequence showed her orchestrating a complex scheme to collapse a black market operation dealing with Force-sensitive children, not with direct confrontation, but by turning rival gangs against each other, creating such chaos that the entire network imploded. Another depicted her meticulously planning the infiltration of a Sith Wayfinder's vault, not to steal it for herself, but to corrupt its navigational data, sending any Sith loyalists using it wildly off course. Luke watched transfixed as his preconceived notions shattered around him. This wasn't the history he knew. He had seen the Empire as a monolithic, unified force, controlled entirely by Palpatine and Vader. But Qi'ra's story revealed a deeper, more insidious struggle, the Sith's centuries-long effort to gather and hoard darkside power, and Qi'ra's audacious, often brutal but undeniable counter-campaign. She operated not from a place of light, but from the gray, using the tools of the darkness against itself. She had systematically targeted cults of the Sith Eternal, disrupted their supply lines for dark artifacts, and even orchestrated the destruction of several hidden academies where Force-sensitive children were being warped by the dark side. One particularly harrowing sequence showed her orchestrating a complex scheme to collapse a black market operation dealing with Force-sensitive children, not with direct confrontation, but by turning rival gangs against each other, creating such chaos that the entire network imploded. Another depicted her meticulously planning the infiltration of a Sith Wayfinder's vault, not to steal it for herself, but to corrupt its navigational data, sending any Sith loyalists using it wildly off course. Luke watched transfixed as his preconceived notions shattered around him. This wasn't the history he knew. He had seen the Empire as a monolithic, unified force, controlled entirely by Palpatine and Vader. But Qi'ra's story revealed a deeper, more insidious struggle, the Sith's centuries-long effort to gather and hoard darkside power, and Qi'ra's audacious, often brutal but undeniable counter-campaign. She operated not from a place of light, but from the gray, using the tools of the darkness against itself. Leia, ever perceptive, spoke softly. She understood the true nature of power, Luke. Not just overt force, but influence, information, manipulation. She fought a different kind of war, unseen by the Jedi. The Holocron showed Qi'ra's sacrifices, her isolation, the brutal choices she had to make. It underscored the sheer audacity of her ambition to undermine the galactic darkness from within its own heart. Her war was fought without glory, without recognition, relying solely on her cunning and the loyalty of a select few. As the final lingering images faded and the Archivist's voice returned, a profound sense of humility settled over Luke. The galaxy's tapestry is woven with countless threads, many of them unseen, the Archivist intoned. The fight against darkness has many fronts, many forms, many unsung heroes. History, as it is commonly understood, is but a whisper in a storm of untold tales. May this knowledge grant you wisdom, Skywalker, and remind you that the Force flows through all, in ways both light and shadow, seen and unseen. The crystalline holocron dimmed, its light receding, its organic lattice settling back into its silent, dormant state. Luke stood there for a long moment, the jungle sounds returning to his awareness as if from a great distance. The simplicity of good versus evil, light versus dark, that had defined so much of his life suddenly felt incomplete. He had thought he knew the galaxy's fight, that he had played a pivotal role in its most crucial battle. But this holocron revealed a vast, complex web of resistance, of sacrifices made in the shadows, of heroes who would never know acclaim. It was a humbling lesson, a profound expansion of his understanding of the Force and its intricate dance with destiny. The fight for freedom, for balance, wasn't just fought with lightsabers and starships. It was fought in the deepest shadows by those who walked a dangerous line, whose names might never grace the history books, but whose actions were just as pivotal. It made him realize that his own journey, as monumental as it felt, was but a small, illuminated part of a much larger, endlessly unfolding story. And this, my friends, is why the galaxy is far more complex than we often imagine. There are countless stories simmering beneath the surface, waiting for the right moment or the right touch to be revealed. What other hidden histories do you think shape the Star Wars galaxy? Who are your unsung heroes? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this journey into the unknown, please consider giving us a like and subscribing for more explorations into the vastness of the Star Wars universe. Until next time, may the Force be with you.